Bonk. Welcome back, folks. Today we're out here reloading some more 223. We've got this gross Winchester brass that was once purple. Now it's been washed and it turned black, and then I prepped it. We've got the Unis Gen X small rifle primers. We're using some Sierra 55 grain boat tail hollow point blemishes. They still shoot good enough for my uses. And we've got a nice mild charge of Hodgdon H335. Bonk. Our overall length is 2.25 based on where the point of the specific bullet is landing, but we are good to go in our magazines, so no issues there. Here we're on the Dillon 550. You can see stage 1, I've got a die. What die is that, dummy? Well, believe it or not, that's my universal expanding die. Why in the hell would you need that for 223 Remington? Well, this Winchester brass, while under trim length, the case necks are a little squared off there because they didn't feel like touching them up on the chamfer tool. So we're just barely breaking that open, and that'll help us avoid some of the scraping on the jackets you can see here. So you just barely open that up, and that'll help your boat tail sit right inside and slide in without scraping up any of the jacket. Stage 2, of course, is our powder drop. Case activated, so if you don't have one stuck in there, it won't drop powder everywhere. Very nice for when you're setting up your other stages. Station 3, that's going to be our taper crimp seating die. However, we have it raised up to not taper crimp, and it is only seating. That's because stage 4, we've got the Lee factory crimp die, which is my favorite for pretty much every cartridge I load, and that just is going to barely close up that little bit of expansion we added on earlier. I'm not doing a very heavy crimp, but just enough to close that up. So like I said, we are nice and dialed in here. I've already actually ran a handful of rounds here. Thought I'd just bring you guys along here near the end. So I'm trying to just clean up components I've got laying around. A whole bunch of, I've got a half jug of powder here to use up. I got a random amount of bullets to use up. Random number of primers left out of that brick. So we're just trying to clean up the old stockpile and condense stuff down. And actually get some ammunition out of it. So I joke with some of my friends that I'm much better at porting components than actual ammo. So I'm doing my best to load some ammo here, Very nice. And these Gen X, like I've said previously, are still fairly difficult to seat, but luckily this Winchester brass came from some apparently very hot factory loads. So the primer pockets, while not totally blown out, not out of spec, they are they're much more forgiving compared to like the Lake City or Federal cases I have been loading with the Gen X primers as well. So with a little bit of reaming to get rid of their crimp, the Gen X are cooperating with these cases much better than previously experienced, though they're still very tight on some of them. Just depending on how much that original case was, how hot that case was. So when some of them are tight, you gotta maybe give them a quarter turn or a half turn and try and reseat them a few times just to make sure it's sufficiently seated, like right here. And that guy's nice and flush, perfectly flat. But we just gotta make sure sometimes. Gotta guarantee you got them good. So I'm not even, if this brass gets a firing, I'm not worried about reloading it 5 times or whatever. It was just picked up from the range, and then I sorted it all out because it was gross and obviously differently colored. Now they look pretty sweet. It almost looks like steel case. But like I said, if you've ever seen that purple cased Winchester training ammunition, this is apparently what it was. And then when you wet tumble, the purple dye comes off, and you can see that it was like nickel plated or some sort of plating before they are able to dye it or something. And it's pretty gross too. It leaves a whole bunch of residue in the necks, so when you're sizing, all this gunk was coming out on my mandrel, and I had to clean the dye out 4 or 5 times. Probably should have done it way more than that, but there we go. See, that primer was a little stiff, but it went in just fine. Yeah. Yeah, I think these are looking pretty sweet. I got that hollow point, the steel looking brass, but it's actually brass. And I think those color of primer look pretty cool. The nickel coated whatever primers would have looked cool too, but sometimes you do things just because it looks cool. I'll be honest, I haven't actually tested this powder charge for accuracy or anything, but I have used it for an equal weight of bullet, and I have less of this bullet in the case than I did with that bullet. So I should have lower pressures than I've experienced before, and it should be right around probably 2,900 or 3,000 feet per second out of a 20-inch barrel, which is nothing to laugh at, but you know, the factory stuff or your M193 XM whatever mil spec is, I think the spec for that is 32 something or 3140 or some kind of weird number around there. So while lagging a couple hundred feet behind than your ass whooping mil spec stuff, you know, these should be pretty comfortable shooting and just some fun and whatever. It's just a target bullet, but like I said, they're blemish seconds or whatever, so I'm not expecting miracles. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time and resources developing a load for a bullet that I'm not even sure of. You know, like I said, I've already ran a couple rounds, and there were some variations in the overall length of the bullets, so that changes the overall length of the cartridge, but that could be because of the blemishes, you know, or why they defined it as a blemish. But these hollow points sometimes during manufacturing can end up with different lengths, so the tips can be a couple thousandths high or low, depending on how far out of spec they were. Make sure we're primed here, make sure we got powder. Yeah, so these are seconds or blems, thus they're not going to perform at their best capability. Thus, I shouldn't spend a bunch of time and resources to develop the best for something that's not even potentially capable of achieving what I would be aiming for. And you guys shouldn't sweat it either. I know a lot of time people are like, oh, you gotta try all the powder charges, you gotta try all the feeding depths, you have to try it in your 7 different guns, and then you gotta try it with 4 different barrel lengths. Ooh, that one feels tight. Oh yeah, that was a good one. Yeah. It's just fine, I must not have taken enough off of that crimp. So yeah, sometimes guys, for just blasting ammo, you don't need to develop a load. You can just pick a safe charge, go out and test a few to make sure it'll cycle your action, or that you're within an inch or two or whatever you're trying to achieve, and call it good. Every time I stop to talk to my hand, aka the camera, I gotta double check to where I'm at and make sure that I have powder, or don't have powder rather, because we didn't run it yet. Okay, just checking. That's how you avoid squibs and double charges. Just gotta pay attention. And I've got the memory of a goldfish, so as soon as I see a squirrel or think of anything else, I forget where I was here, so you gotta double check it. You know? One thing, oh God! I was just gonna say it's one thing to be a dummy, but it's another thing to be a self-aware dummy, right? Okay, so that means we need more primers. Let's grab another little box of the Unis Genix Bosnia Herzegovina. Yep. Let me get this loaded up and we'll be right back. All right, where were we? Since we got so rudely interrupted by the empty primer dispensing alarm. Not worrying so much about your load development and just making some ammo. I'm sure some of you guys have a different philosophy. You know, this crap is getting really, really expensive these days. So you probably want every shot to count, you know? You're not just there to start dude bro mag dumping your belt fed Gatling AR, you know? So perhaps even with your seconds or whatever you're focused on reloading, maybe you do want to take your time and do a ladder and test your overall length, and that's totally fine. Because that's your hobby and you can do it how you want. But like I said, right now in this specific situation, we're just trying to use up remaining leftover components and clean up the stash a bit, because like I've mentioned several times now, we're going to start working on actual precision-y rifle stuff in my bolt guns, starting with some 243. We got the Hornady overall length gauge and the 223, 243, and 308 modified cases. So for the bolt guns I have in that, we can actually start testing our jumps, our jamming, all that kind of fun stuff that I've never done. And I've also got the bullet and headspace comparator gauges now. So those are nice for, well, they will be nice for dialing in our head spacing and how much we need to be sizing our brass. So that'll help extend our brass life, as well as, you know, probably, hopefully enhance our accuracy, because we'll be more consistent. Our cases won't be blowing out and stretching as much every single time. So the goal will be consistency and precision, but not today at all. If you see me on this blue press and this is rotating with all 4 stages set up, this is not specifically a precision setup. That's not to say it cannot be a precision setup. Wow. I'm sure there's dozens and hundreds of competition shooters that all use Dillons and that's all they load on, but they've done the work up front to find their loads. And they probably have really nice micrometer seating dies. They might, instead of an automatic powder drop, they might have a funnel there where they're dumping from their precision lab scale, whatever they've got. So you can, of course, load precision, super awesome custom hand loads on a Dillon progressive press. But today, for me, and for the next probably foreseeable future, I'm going to be using this for progressive blasting ammo. Maybe unless we got like a really badass 77 grain Match King load up going on, then, you know, if you're just trying to match your Mark 262 or whatever, you know, you can have that set up and load up 500 of them if you want to. But I'm just rambling. That's not what I'm doing today. We're making some fun ammo. After this, though, I need to make a few test rounds, or rather I've got the test rounds loaded. I need to go and see if these 50 grain Frangible bullets I've got are going to cycle my 20 inch and what charges, you know, do or don't work. Because that stuff is frangible, so it's supposed to be safe on steel, not ricocheting and reflecting and dangerous at closer distances. So all this nice steel jacketed, full metal jacketed projectiles I've got, all these, they can be used for other things while I'll have frangible stuff for training at the range here. And I won't have to worry about blasting holes through my steel when I'm, you know, inside 50 yards or closer, just trying to work on reloading or target acquisition or whatever. The frangible ammo is nice on my steel. So I'm going to be loading some low pressure but still able to cycle, accurate within 50 yards, 50 grain frangible stuff here soon. And I've got a couple boxes of those projectiles to work through, so that'll be a fun project here. I probably actually need to start working through a 5-gallon bucket of brass to prep and have ready to go, because we'll probably be likely to fill that back up with blasting ammo. How many rounds actually fit in a 5-gallon drum? Not pieces of brass, but how many rounds of loaded 223 fit in a drum? Or not a drum, sorry, a 5-gallon bucket. 55-gallon drum, that sucker would probably weigh a couple thousand pounds. That'd be insane. 5-gallon bucket's actually probably gonna be several hundred pounds too. A single 50 cal can full of ammo, I think that holds 1,000 to 1,200 rounds of 223. I'm probably wrong, but those are like freaking heavy. If you're carrying 2 of those, that's probably all you're going to be carrying. So to imagine a 5-gallon drum, that's got to be heavy. Okay, we dropped powder. I had to double check there just to make sure. Okay, there we go. So maybe I won't fill up the 5-gallon drum with the frangibles, but I'll find a good way to store a good handful of them for range days. I've heard people using them, well, I've read comments or whatever on the internet about people using the frangible stuff for self-defense. I'm not sure how that would work. Would it probably just blow up and pop like a varmint sort of projectile, like a VMAX or a varmint grenade or Armageddon or whatever they are from Noslerino? The Sierra Blitz King, I think. Those are the prairie dog poppers, you know? Is that what the frangible stuff does? Or am I misunderstood here as to why people use those for a defensive option? Because I was looking at the spec of the, I think it's Federal, it might have been Winchester, from the factory rounds they came from. I think they were only going 28 or 2,900 feet per second for a 50 grain bullet, which is pretty slow out of a 223. If a 55 grain is generally going 3,200. See what I'm saying? So they're running them lower. Maybe they don't have, well, they're actually really long, so you don't have as much room for powder. That could probably be why. If you remember a while back, long while back, I did a short and I showed the frangible bullet next to a 50, 55, 60, 69, 75 grain bullet, and the frangible 50 grain is bigger than the 75 grains. So yeah, 50 grain bullet takes up way more case capacity than the 55 grains. So I'm only going to be able to shove low 20-ish grains of powder into it compared to like 26, 27, 28 grains of some powders you can do for a normal 55 grain full metal jacket or whatever. Have you guys loaded these 50 grain frangibles before? They were pull downs from American Reloading. Has anybody grabbed a box of those? They actually have like little brown polymer tips. I think they just call them brown tips. So look into it if you're interested. Sometimes they're on sale there. And they're pretty cheap for a good blasting option. And I guess if they have merit for self-defense, I guess that's an option too. But I don't know how expensive the factory ammo would be compared to just getting some loaded up VMAX ammo or whatever. Critical defense or whatever, man. So I've actually got not that many projectiles left. I'm trying to run through this powder. That's what my goal was. I'm trying to clear out the powder cabinet and just consolidate 1 or 2 powders rather than having a couple 1 or 2 pounds of a couple different kinds, to where you can't really load up a consistent lot of ammo. You know, generally for 25 grains of powder, which is a pretty average charge for a 223 with this weight of bullet, you're looking at roughly 250 rounds per 1 pound of powder. So if I'm only able to load, if I have 1 to 3 pounds of a bunch of different stuff, that's only 250 to 750 rounds of one, similar type of ammunition. So you're going to just have a whole bunch of different crap everywhere. So I'm trying to consolidate so I can have one like item, and I'm done. Boom. Of course, it's fun to experiment and try different things, so I will have some variety, of course, for testing, because that's fun. Testing is fun, and that's what we're going to be doing, like I said, with the more precision stuff. Wow. But yeah, trying to consolidate and trim down some of the extra crap just laying everywhere. Which means I'm going to have a bunch of random ammo laying around I'm going to have to shoot through, or do some slight testing with, take some notes, and see where we go from there. But I've only got a couple more projectiles here, so we're going to wrap this one up. I'll just bring you in here at the end, saying what's up. Stay tuned for more loading. I've got a whole bunch of cool product reviews coming up here, testing some holsters and some lights and some different scales and such. So stay tuned for all that fun stuff, folks. I really appreciate you hanging out. We're going to get rid of this because I'm out of bullets. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys hanging out. And we're going to finish this one up here. And we will see you guys in the next video. Boom. Have a good one.